Hey Bonbini everybody, Matt here from the Cruise Geeks. A while back, I did this Vista trip. Actually, it was May of 2018, and I released the vlog, and in it I had some highlights from my snorkeling and diving adventures, and I promised you guys that I would release the full snorkel and full dives and kind of narrate. Oh, there's Charlie. Hey Charlie. Well, I haven't done that yet, so this is what I'm doing now, and what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to release them in sections. So instead of doing like a full 30-40 minute type of video, I'm probably going to cut it into 2-3 parts depending on the length of the snorkel or the dive, and then I'll throw them in a playlist. Hey, I know that guy, so that you guys can watch them together. So this is the first one I wanted to start with because it was the first one of our trip. This was in Grand Turk, and this was a really cool excursion. It was called the Ultimate Snorkel and Beach Adventure. Now, I gotta tell you, the beach part was pretty much just the beach that you walk down from Grand Turk from the port. But that's okay. I mean, it's still a nice beach. I think you could stay there with a little bit less crowd and stuff like that if you wanted to. But we went to 2 different locations. So I'm just gonna talk about this first one that they took us to. Now, my understanding is if you sign up for this excursion, they might take you to these spots in a different order, but this is the order they took us to. This is a deeper location, and this is right at the wall. So there's a wall in Grand Turk that drops down about 7,000 feet, and this is the edge of it, that trench right there that I'm swimming down into. This right here, I believe, was around 25 feet or so, maybe 30 feet. I think maybe it hits 30, 35 feet, somewhere in there, right around this point. And this is a great location. The problem is, because of the depth, you can kind of get a feel for how deep it is here. If you're not comfortable swimming underwater, this could be a challenging spot. Now, this excursion, when we did it, I believe we did it through Carnival, which is the Vista we were on, and I want to say it was around $61.99 per person for adults. So this was through a company called Oasis Divers. Now, I have gone scuba diving with them before, and I'm going to do that again real soon after this video is being made. They also do these snorkel runs where they take you out on the boat to the 2 locations. So that's what's going on here. Now, here's something that you should know. If you are snorkeling in deep water like this, looking down at the bottom, you notice a couple things. One, you're only going to get a bird's eye view of the fish because you're looking down at them. 2, they're pretty deep. And 3, it looks really blue. Oh, look at that. There's our little nurse shark encounter that we had. That was a pretty cool sight on this particular excursion. So yeah, you know, everything's kind of blue because as the light goes through the water, the color red just doesn't make it down there. So a lot of cameras, if you're using them in the water, people will put red filters on there to help bring some of that color back. You can also do that in post. Now, the camera I'm using for all of the snorkel and dive footage you're going to see in this little series are all my Sony FDX R3000. I think I said that right. And it's got a really neat bit of software in there that actually kind of detects when you're underwater. You set it for underwater mode, but it kind of picks that up and takes care of that red filter automatically, so you don't have to put an external filter on. Now, every now and then it gets a little bit confused when you first pop up out of the water, and you'll see a little bit of pinkish color or red color. You could fix that in post or edit that out if you needed to do that, but for the most part, this works so much better than any other camera I've ever used underwater, and that includes a couple of different types of GoPros. I'm way more impressed with this camera personally for my use. You can see that nurse shark moving down there a little bit. But yeah, I had to swim down and see these fish up close. So it looks a lot different, as you guys probably can already tell. There's a difference between being on the surface and down towards the bottom. Now, that fish with the kind of dark color and the white lines swim off to the right, that was a black sturgeon. Those 2 down at the bottom were orange spotted filefish. My goal in this series is to point out that's a coney. I believe that's a coney. They can be really variable in colors. Those parrotfish right there are called queen parrotfish. So my goal is to try and point out some of the different species of fish along the way while I do these videos, it's a little challenging because obviously there's a lot of fish and sometimes they're not on the screen for very long. So if you see a fish and I didn't point it out, just leave a comment with the time code and or timestamp and let me know what it was, and I'll try and identify it for you. I should be able to figure out what any of these fish are in this series. Now, the thing is, I am going to do these unedited, so you're going to get Charlie's knees a little bit there. I might edit something out if it's just really boring for a long time, but when I want you guys to see the full process, because a lot of times what you see is just my underwater footage, and although I do spend a lot of time underwater, I have to come up and I have to catch my breath and I have to take a break every now and then, and I'm scoping out different areas to see. And right now I'm moving over to the deeper part. I want to be kind of over the wall. This is that 7,000 foot drop off, and I don't know if you can see that fish kind of that was in the center for a minute. That's a large, like 2+ foot porcupine fish that I believe I am going to swim down and investigate real soon. It's also really cool just to see the light shining through this abyss of water. When I dive on this wall, which I have done once before, like I said, I'm going to do it again real soon, then you spend most of your time, at least the dive that I did before, most of the time was down around 80 feet or so, and that's because you can see it kind of drops off, then it evens out, then it'll drop off again, but at some point it just drops straight off. Now, on these coral heads here, this is all built up. Oh, there's some Creole wrasse down there. This is all built up from thousands of years of coral formations, just building on top of each other, creating these structures. As the coral grows, it produces a limestone skeleton, and it just builds on top of itself, polyps after polyps. That's what the hard stony corals do, and that's how you get these huge coral reef formations. And that's why they can be very sensitive, because only the very top of this system is really the part that's alive. And so if somebody steps on it, drags an anchor over it, if the temperature is a little bit off, there's any little thing can go wrong, and it can damage this coral, and then you've lost the growth of possibly thousands and thousands of generations of this coral reef. So coral makes up a really, really tiny percentage of the world's oceans, and yet it holds an enormous amount of biodiversity. So that's different types of animals. Super important environment. I always say they're like the rainforests of the ocean. And so many of our commercial fish that people depend on as a food source or as a livelihood, so many of those fish depend on the coral reef. Even if they don't live on the coral reef, there are whole systems and groups of animals that survive on the outskirts. So, they don't necessarily live in the coral reef, or maybe they are only there for a certain part of their life, but there are big living communities on the outskirts of these coral reefs as well. So here I'm going to dive down again. Now, some of the things you see are things called soft corals. There are a lot of other animals. There's some more queen parrotfish. There are a lot of other different types of things like sponges, and we may see some sea anemones and sea urchins, and there are other things that are not as obvious, like crinoids. I think I said that right, and lots of different stuff that you can get on a coral reef. The reason it's called a coral reef is because that is the main component that builds the structure. And there are different types of corals and different types of reefs that you can find all over the tropical areas of our oceans, but they're only in those tropical areas. There are some cold water corals and some deep water corals, but they're not building huge coral reefs like we get in the warmer parts of the world. So very specific band. If you look at the range of coral reefs around the world, they're in that sort of center band around the planet, close enough to the equator where they're able to maintain a warm water temperature. They also require clear water, because the thing about coral is that it lives symbiotically. That means it has a partnership, basically, with a type of algae called zooxanthellae. Now, zooxanthellae lives on the coral, and in most cases gives the coral its color. And coral, most of them feed through two different means. One, they have little stinging cells called nematocyst cells that fire off at little microscopic things that they're eating, plankton and stuff that's drifting by. But then they also get some energy through the photosynthesis that algae does. So since algae is like a plant-like thing, so it produces or gains energy through photosynthesis, and the coral's actually able to utilize some of that. There's that porcupine fish. I'm going to go check him out. Now, if you hear the term coral bleaching, what's actually going on there, look at him. He's like, wait, you're not supposed to be down here. Off to the left, there are some schoolmasters with yellow tails, and there are some other things like mangrove snappers. But if you hear the term coral bleaching, what has happened is that coral has been stressed out. And when that coral gets stressed out, it tends to kick out the zooxanthellae, or the zooxanthellae leaves. I don't know who instigates it, but when that happens, the soft tissue of the coral is typically clear, and so you just see that white skeleton below, and it looks like somebody dumped a bunch of bleach on the coral reef, and that's where the term coral bleaching comes from. Now, the zooxanthellae can come back as long as the coral animal is still alive, but as you might guess, the coral's only going to live for a short amount of time without that partnership. It really does depend on that partnership in order to get enough energy to survive. So it can't go for too long without its zooxanthellae buddies. I just like to say the word zooxanthellae. And yeah, there's Charlie's knees. You can now here's a little tip for you. Look at all those people crowded off in the center. Okay, when you go on a snorkeling excursion, the best thing to do is move away from the herd. Get away from that pack. People are going to be kicking you in the face. Look at them. They're all snorkeling like vertically. That's not how you snorkel. You got to be horizontal. You're not going to see anything if you're vertical. So get away from the pack. Now, you do want to follow the captain's rules, and they'll give you designated areas. And especially on a boat snorkel, that's important because there might be currents or there might be boat traffic in the area. So definitely be aware of where you are and are not supposed to be during your snorkeling adventures. I don't know what I'm pointing to here, but I think I'm pointing that porcupine fish out to Charlie. See if he can go take a look at it. Now, Charlie's wearing a snorkeling vest. I was wearing one as well. They do require that. A lot of places will require that. You don't have to put air in them, and I don't like to because that air just keeps me from going underwater. But if you're not going to be swimming underwater, if you're not a strong swimmer, those snorkeling vests, they make a nice version of a life vest. They're not as buoyant unless you just really fill them up with air. Hello. You can see a little bit of red color there. But they will keep you afloat. And if you're in saltwater, you're going to be pretty buoyant anyway. So it doesn't take a whole lot to become really buoyant in that saltwater. Now, overall, I really enjoyed this location for snorkeling. I like to swim down deep. It's kind of something that I want to do. I don't always like to be in shallow water, but it's not for everybody. A lot of people would struggle with this spot. Now, I think they still had fun, and you can see there's some fish swimming up near the top. The people, I think, fed them and stuff, which is, controversial. But yeah, it's still, you're still going to have fun. But if you can swim underwater, you're going to see a lot more. Look at all those little juvenile fish. A lot of those are little wrasse. There's some blue chromis, little type of fish called a damsel, which is different kinds. Those are blue chromis, and really get to see some of the coral and stuff up close. Now, you do want to be careful. You shouldn't step on coral. You shouldn't grab any of this coral because you will possibly get stung. You will possibly get cut, but also you will squish that poor coral. So don't squish the coral. It's like I said, it's pretty sensitive stuff. We gotta take care of it. We gotta protect it. Well, listen, I'm gonna wrap up this first part of this video. If you do enjoy these videos, please let me know in the comments below, and that'll determine if I do these kind of full snorkel and scuba diving videos in the future. I am gonna do all of them from the Vista Tour, but we'll see if I want to do them in the future depending on how you guys like them. So definitely let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you do like them, but even more important, comment down below. Tell me what you think. Do you like these? Do you enjoy these? And if you do, also subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so that you're notified every time a new Cruise Geeks video comes out, especially one of these in the series. And until next time, everybody, and for part 2, have a fantastic day.